Race is such a complicated topic because, from a scientific perspective, because as scientists, we're actually unable to measure anything that actually backs up the hypothesis of race. People, walk around the world and they see people more like them and less like them, and we have obviously some kind of instinct to typologize them. At the time of the World's Fair, there was a lot of interest, of course, in race. This was, race is a very ancient concept. It predates science. But at the time, this was, of course, post-Darwin. Darwin had published The Origin of Species in 1859. And not long after Darwin, people started using Darwin in all kinds of questionable and disturbing ways. Boas was actually interested in using the scientific method to question some of the kind of scientific racism that was prevalent at the time. For example, let's just say you define race on the basis of skin color. Well, it turns out that skin color is so variable within populations or between populations that the way in which you would define a race based on skin color turns out to be different than how you would define race based on nose shape or hair type or eye color or blood type or all kinds of genes. So every feature that you look at would actually end up causing you to divide the world in different ways. And it's for that really basic fundamental reason that race is a useless, actually non-scientific concept. You cannot define the world typologically in the way that we often do that in some kind of instinctive manner. A really interesting question is, why have human beings changed so much over the last few thousand years? And why is it that you cannot draw back, certain features in time, from the present back that far in time? And we don't really know the answer to that, but there are probably several factors. The first is that human populations aren't static. They don't just sit there in one place and just stay isolated. The human populations are constantly moving around and dispersing and interacting with each other, and that causes genes to move around the world. A second reason is that environments change, and environments is a major factor that affects how our bodies grow and function. Well, we no longer call physical anthropology. We now call it either biological anthropology or human evolutionary biology or evolutionary anthropology. But in general, biological anthropologists study the evolution of humans and how evolution helps explain how and why we are the way we are. And we're also interested, of course, in its relevance to the world today. And so we have new tools to study the human body. Instead of just taking calipers and measuring, the width from here to here, I can CT scan somebody and collect three-dimensional data, which is so much more information than just what I can get from a caliper. More importantly, of course, I can study how people use their bodies in ways that we didn't do before. And I can get genetic data. We can get individuals' genomes today and look at the relationship between genetics and environment and that complex interplay that results in who and why we are the way we are. Because everything about our bodies are an interaction between genes and environment. Genes aren't deterministic, and environment isn't deterministic. It's this complex interplay between our genes and our environments that matter.